Hi guys, so Boris Johnson released a statement on Friday. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do a response to it on Friday, but I am doing it now on Monday. Let's hear what he had to say about this Canada-style trade deal, Australian-style trade deal, and how the negotiations are going.
Good morning. We left the European Union on January the 31st and delivered on the largest...
I'm not sure why he's looking down at a piece of paper. Surely Boris knows this, but okay.
Democratic mandate in the history of this country. And since then, we've been in a transition period, obeying EU law, paying our fees as a non-voting member.
You make it sound like that's a bad thing, Boris. You signed up to it. You agreed to it. You sold it to the British public as something, as a oven-ready deal, although it was the transition period. But you make it sound like it's something bad. Which is quite strange.
Working on the future relationship we hope to enjoy with our friends and partners from January. And from the outset, we were totally clear that we wanted nothing more complicated than a Canada-style relationship based on friendship and free trade.
Now, this is not exactly true. It wasn't something that was presented from the outset. It was something that was mentioned during the negotiations. But let's say, for example, if that was the truth, that Boris Johnson said, look, we just want something quite simple, like a Canada-style trade deal. And the European Union have said from the outset, that's not possible because Canada and the UK are completely different countries, two completely different economies. And there's also another important issue that separates Canada and the UK. So let me just show you. For example, here is the top 10 exports from Canada. Mineral fuels, including oil, vehicles, computer machinery, including computers, gems, precious metals, electrical machinery equipment, plastics, wood, aircraft, spacecraft, ore, slag, ash, and pharmaceuticals. These are the top 10 exports from Canada. The UK is not similar to the UK. And also, of course, the most glaring difference between Canada and the UK is that Canada is 6,523 kilometers away. That's from the center of Canada, of course. But we're talking thousands of kilometers. So Canada export different and, of course, import different types of materials. The UK is more a service industry economy. So the UK exports more services than actual physical goods. And of course, there's the distance. You can't drive trucks from Canada to Europe, while you can drive trucks from the UK into Europe. That's the glaring difference there. But let's continue.
To judge by the latest EU summit in Brussels, that won't work for our...
Well, it wasn't actually from the latest summit. That has never worked since the beginning. Michel Barnier has said on numerous occasions, the UK wants a Canada-style trade deal. We can't have that because Canada and the UK are completely different.
Our EU partners. They want the continued ability to control our legislative freedom, our fisheries, in a way that is completely unacceptable to an independent country.
Once again, this independent, it's not that they are controlling it, it's an agreement. You agree something together, and then there is a mechanism if both sides have an issue with it, there is an arbitrary body. Once again, it's this political language that is the problem surrounding Brexit. It's not, well, we set down agreed rules together, and then we have an arbiter who decides if one side has has followed through with those rules or not. It's once again this political language of the EU are trying to control us. The EU are trying to do something that's infringing on our sovereignty. It's not the case. It's an agreement. Both sides agree to something. If one side breaks the agreement, there must be an arbiter.
And since we have only 10 weeks until the end of the transition period on January the 1st, I have to make a judgment about the likely outcome and to get us all ready. And given that they have refused to negotiate seriously for much of the last few months, and
wow, what projection there is here. The EU have not been serious with their negotiations. Really? The EU have said that the UK have not been serious about their negotiations. Now, who is more likely to... Who are you going to trust? Are you going to trust Ursula von der Leyen and Michel Barnier, or are you going to trust Boris Johnson? Boris Johnson, who's always honest, who has never told a lie in his life. Who are you going to trust when one side is saying the other is lying, or what the other side is being dishonest or not serious? Does anyone take Boris Johnson seriously at all? Even members of his own party don't take him seriously.
given that this summit appears explicitly to rule out a Canada-style deal, I've concluded that we should get ready for January the 1st with arrangements that are more like Australia's.
Basically, no deal, because Australia don't have a deal with the European Union. Australia and the European Union are now working towards having a deal because the status quo is so terrible. So Boris Johnson wants not something better, but something worse than the current status. He wants no deal. He wants a situation that's so bad that Australia and the EU are trying to fix. He wants a broken system. That's basically what he's trying to sell the public. Now, of course, he's not going to sell this as no deal, because no deal would be a failure. So he's going to sell it as an Australian-style deal, which doesn't exist. Once again, it does not exist. It's no deal.
Based on simple principles of global free trade. And we can do it because we always knew that there would be change on January the 1st, whatever type of relationship we had. And so now is the time for our businesses to get ready and for our hauliers to get ready for travel.
Now is the time. 10 weeks to go. You have time to get ready. We've seen numerous reports of IT systems that are not up to date, not up and running. And of course, we all know that any software system that is rolled out from day one never has any problems or never have any bugs. The same people who sold you universal credit, where people have to wait up to 5 weeks to receive a payment, are trying to sell you the same, trying to tell you that, yeah, they are ready to leave the European Union on day one.
Travellers to get ready. And of course, we're willing to discuss the practicalities with our friends, where a lot of progress has already been made, by the way, on such issues as social security and aviation, nuclear cooperation, and so on.
Isn't it interesting how Boris sells these as cooperation, not compromises? These are compromises that the UK has made. The EU has said, look, if you want X, you have to agree to Y. The UK said, okay, we want X, so we'll agree to Y. That was a compromise. They compromised on a number of issues. And Boris Johnson is trying to sell it to the British public. This is all about selling it to the British public. This is not about selling it to the European Union. The European Union know what Boris Johnson has compromised on. He's trying to sell it as a cooperation. It's not a compromise, it's a cooperation. Once again, this doublespeak, this use of language, we're not trying to sell people no deal. We're trying to sell them an Australian-style deal, which is no deal.
But for whatever reason, it's clear from the summit that after 45 years of membership, they are not willing, unless there's some fundamental change of approach, to offer this country the same terms as Canada. And
this is just saber rattling. This is trying to extract concessions from the European Union. Now, there's two ways. I've been trying to look at this from two different angles. One is it could be an attempt to extract concessions to improve the situation with the UK, with the EU. Or it could be another approach. Boris is trying to run down the clock again. We're going to walk away. We're going to get our deal at the last minute. We're going to get something at the last minute, a bare bones deal, a deal in name only at the last minute. And then he'll sell it to the British public as a victory. You know, this is all political jousting. It's like it's just this political theatre of, look, we threw this this threat at the EU. We're going to break international law, and they compromised. Of course, they didn't. We walked away from, and then they came running to us to ask us for a trade deal. Once again, playing up the idea that it's, the EU, it needs a deal. We don't need a deal. We're okay. We offered, a Canada-style deal, and they said no. Okay, then we'll agree an Australian-style deal, which is no deal. Now, this is going to be a disaster, deal or no deal, but it's going to be interesting who Boris Johnson is going to blame in January for when it's absolutely clear that it's not working.
So with high hearts and with complete confidence, we will prepare to embrace the alternative, and we will prosper mightily as an independent, free trading nation, controlling our own borders, our fisheries, and setting our own laws.
Okay, there's so much crap there, but so if no deal is good, then why did Michael Gove, your minister, say no deal would be a disaster? It would be extremely damaging to the UK economy. You'd have thousands of trucks piled up near Dover. How can Michael Gove say it's an absolute disaster, no deal, and Boris Johnson less than a month later say a no deal will prosper under a no deal? Who is lying? Or maybe both of them are lying.
And in the meantime, the government will, of course, be focusing on tackling COVID and building back better so that 2021 is a year of recovery and renewal. Thank you.
Now, some people are talking about how this could be an attempt to, he mentioned COVID here, so he could be using COVID as a cover for how bad Brexit will be. Because for the Brexiteers, Brexit will be a success. But if it's getting bogged down, it's because of the pandemic. It's the pandemic that has been undermining Brexit. Brexit is good. Brexit is, like a religion. You never criticize Brexit. But in reality, or in their reality, it's the pandemic that's causing these problems. It's not Brexit. It would be the pandemic. And of course, Boris Johnson, the Conservative Party, are all about blaming everyone else. Look at how he has dealt with the pandemic. Blaming the public. Blaming members of the NHS for using too much PPE. For blaming care homes for not being prepared. Blaming local towns for not following his advice. Blaming the public for not following the advice, even though the advice didn't make any sense. It's all about blaming someone else. The Conservatives have never taken responsibility for anything. I've said this in another video, how at least in Scotland, when there was the education fiasco, the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, took responsibility. She said, I'm sorry. She apologised for the mistakes of the government. Boris Johnson and the Tories will never apologise. It will be always someone else's fault.
Thank you very much.
And that's all I want to say on this. This Australian-style deal is no deal. Boris Johnson, I think, this is my approach. This is what I think he's doing. He's attempting to run down the clock because there's still a number of weeks left. It's not necessary for him to walk away at this stage. I think he's playing to the public. Look, I'm tough. I'm a hard man. I'm able to face down the European Union. And then he'll compromise. He has compromised already, so he will compromise. He'll get some sort of bare bones deal. And then he'll return to Parliament and he'll be, King Boris. He has defeated the European Union on the Brexit battlefield. We have defeated them. We got our deal. They resisted, but we were the stronger. The empire strikes back. The empire is back in all its glory. Boris Johnson cares about Boris Johnson. He doesn't care about the British people. He doesn't care about businesses. He doesn't care about anyone else but himself. And he wants to remain Prime Minister. He knows that there are people around him who would like to see him fall, so they would take up the mantle. So I think he's playing this Brexit game in order, once again, to run down the clock and return victorious that he has achieved an Australian-style deal. They've already changed the name from No Deal to Australian-style deal. I'd love to know your comments in the comment section, guys. Let me know what you think. As always, they're greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?